Hello, my name is Charly Barr, and I'm here uh, at the request of Gabriel Dawkins to try to put together a little bit of verbal history of the origins of the bridge, the beginning years. So I will do my best, where my old man memory serves us, to try to piece some of those things together so you get an idea of where your roots are from. First of all, myself and the fellas and girls that I have been able to keep in touch with, particularly in relation to this program, The Bridge, recently, are very proud of what you have done, and we're very proud to have been there at the very beginning to set this ship afloat and out to sea, where you guys have taken it to a whole new uh, world. So uh, many of the things that drove us apparently are still driving you. We love them. And there's apparently a lot of love that goes into the program now. So let me start at the beginning, as I recall. Back in 1974, Dr. Ben Shepherd, one of the more powerful people in Florida at the time, great man, involved with the Cuban uh, flight, the Peter Pan movement, and all that, uh, and Dick Moran, both were working for the Catholic Service Bureau at the time, and I believe they generated St. Luke's methadone clinic. After that particular challenge, they decided that it was time that they wanted to do something different, and they tackled the youth issues of South Florida. What they did there was uh, they established a charter to house and counsel uh, runaways from 10 to 18, uh, and gave a secondary place for juveniles waiting adjudication in the court system for law violations. We had 25 beds, 12 went to non-secure detention, 13 juveniles, the delinquents, and 13 went to the runaways. Um, the bridge itself was rented from the mayor, as I recall, for $1 a year, and that meant that we overpaid for it. but it was a place to put the program to start. Uh, the bridge itself, when we occupied it, didn't have locks. I don't remember if it had all its doors. It did not have all its windows. It didn't have electricity. We got electricity on the first floor pretty quickly, um, but my whole 3 years there, we didn't have electricity on the second floor. So, and that's where the kids slept. Uh, Dick Moran is basically the founder and the inspiration for the bridge. Dick Moran and the Moran family were the finest people that God ever put on this earth. Uh, they took me in when I came down from the Philadelphia area, and all my friends that I brought down with me to work at the bridge over the years. They were our family away from family. And they actually brought that same vibe, that same feeling, that same love and care into the program itself with the kids that we worked with. We had all kinds. Dick himself was a bear of a man. He was a saint. He was a Marine. He was a badass. He was a Notre Dame football player, and he was one of the most kindest and gentlest people you ever met until he wasn't. And you really didn't want to be in that same room when he wasn't. Uh, Lots of life, could party hard, just a joy to be with. I miss him every day of my life. Um, the program itself was driven by kids who walked off the street through word of mouth. Police would bring non-secure detention, uh, children to the program while they waited for their adjudication, their trials and their hearings. Most of the time, they were not terribly serious crimes. I mean, we had, some pretty bad eggs, and we had a couple kids that, there were some pretty violent things going on. This was Dodge City. Probably Miami still has a lot of that, but back then, with all the coke and drug money, the pimps and the players and the sex slaves, uh, establishments that were around were tough to compete with. We had a little girl named Maggie Davis. She was our outreach counselor, 98 pounds of just sheer courage. She would walk the streets at night in Miami by herself, off the beaches, looking for kids to try to get them to come in off the street, the bus depots, the corners, the hangs, anywhere she could find kids by herself. And she would bring them in. Very persuasive little girl. I guess at the time Maggie was probably around 20, 21 years old. We had another house parent who eventually became a counselor, Nellie Loth. Big woman, big girl, big, beautiful, and another badass. She loved the kids so much you could feel it when she walked by. Energy level like a hurricane. Just inspiring to work with. She started out as a house parent too. She ultimately became a counselor. She was still there when I left in 1978. When we were just about ready to move the program soon afterwards to Liberty City, I brought down 4 or 5 of my classmates from Allentown College. Tom Brown, who started as a house parent and became a facilities manager. Mark Saxton, who started out as a house parent and became a facilities manager and became a counselor. Walter Schwamberg, who stayed a house parent until he went back home. Daryl, I don't remember Daryl's name anymore. He was still there when I left. So Allentown College staffed this place up. Philadelphia had a main line right into the place. House parents were the lifeblood of the program. They were with the kids 24/7. The kids were never left alone. And during the day, they could leave with a pass, but they had to be back, I think, by supper time, unless they had a job at night. They could leave anytime they wanted. We didn't keep them there. But if they left without permission, they were not welcome back. And usually if they left without permission, they weren't planning on coming back. Non-security detention kids had no choice. They had to stay unless they were escorted off the place with one of us. Their rules were a little different. They screw up, they go back to jail. The runaways, they screw up, we just threw them out. You try to work with them, you didn't throw them out for the first offense, depending on what the size of the offense was and so forth. But we were going through a lot of children, 3,000 of them in 3 years. Couldn't help everybody, so you couldn't let those who had no interest in being helped keep you from helping those who did. So it's kind of a harsh environment. Our average stay, I don't know, you figure it out. 25 beds, 3,000 kids, 365 days a year times 3. It's a pretty short stay. Some stayed a month or 2, some stayed 15 minutes, some stayed until we took their weapons away and then they left. Some stayed for a meal. But most of them stayed and tried to get with the program while they were there. Uh, we would, if a child ran away from Detroit or Chicago and found their way to the Miami Bridge, and the police would pick them up and bring them if they realized that they were just walking the streets at 4 in the morning. We would try to deal with the issue that made them run away, talk to the parents. We did have, I think, 72 hours, I believe, to uh, come up with a plan before we had to release them to their parents or whatever, because the law was changed when we first started the program to allow us to keep them long enough to study the situation. Uh, those kids ranged from all kind of issues. Some of them were spoiled brats and just wanted to run away, and they thought their life was better and the grass was greener on the other side. Some of them were severely abused. Um, some of them were predatory. Some of them were already uh, attacked on the street. This was right before the AIDS epidemic hit the country. Uh, when they come in, if we would check them out as best we could, and then we would decide do they need to see the doctor or not. I think when we left and AIDS took over, it became a lot more sophisticated on getting their physicals and so forth. But I wasn't there for that. Uh, the environment itself, we were in downtown Miami. Uh, the traffic out front, the foot traffic out front was colorful. The house parents would stay up on the third floor when they were off duty, and they would watch the street as the muggings would take place or all the things that would happen on the street. You could decide to get involved or not. Generally, they decided that if it was bad, they would go downstairs and call the police. But otherwise, most of the time, we didn't get involved. Our responsibility started and ended there on the bottom step before we went down the street. Occasionally, it would get bad enough that I would run across the street and try to pull somebody off of choking someone to death. But generally speaking, uh, we kept the two worlds apart.